Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you've been enjoying the day so far. Um, we've looked at some of the basics of USD, and we've looked at what it takes to prep assets for use in USD and ultimately in Solaris. We've taken a look at building out a layout or fleshing out a layout in LOPS, and as well as had some great tutorials from a few people about doing some effects and how that works with USD and LOPS and Houdini. So now I want to pick up where I left off. And before I move on to lighting shots in particular, I'm going to start off by taking the sequence that we've written out already, and I am going to do some sequence lighting for that. Okay, I'm going to start off by dropping down a sublayer node. I'm going to grab that sequence layout that we created earlier today. Let's grab that sequence layout. In fact, we'll call this node sequence layout. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to put a layer breakdown here so that everything after this just gets is written out by itself, kind of like what we did with the cameras. So I can go up here and using the shelf tool, I am going to control click on environment light. So it's going to drop down my environment light here, right in the center. You can see I have high quality lighting turned on. I'm getting some nice shadows in the viewport. And this is just in our standard viewport. Let me turn off those guides one more time. I don't need to see those. Weird little error. And so that's kind of cool. Getting some nice looking lighting there. Some of these rocks, oh, those are bounding boxes, right? If I was to turn off the optimized thing, let me just, actually the pebbles are there. We'll leave it on for now. I want to also point out that there's a lot of controls I have over here. I can do bounding box, full geometry for within my scene graph tree to control some of that visibility as well. All right, so I have a dome light. Let's give it a little bit of color here. Maybe a little bit of bluish hue to it. Okay, now I'm going to control click on a distant light. Now when I do that, it automatically sets the viewport to the distant light, so we see which way we're looking. So this is sort of going to be treated like a sun. In fact, I'm going to name it the sun. Let's name this E and V light. Okay. And while looking through that sunlight, let me lock the camera. And what I want to do, I'm going to select the tent, kind of home in on that way. With the sun, get a nice kind of like that maybe. Okay. Let's go back in here and look this way. And let me start messing with some of the values of that light and turn off that selection. Let's crank up the exposure there. There we go. Let's pop into Karma and see what that looks like for us. That's an old render in there. It just has to re-render. I was probably doing a test render of some stuff prior to this. So while this is rendering, I also want to take a look at my viewport settings. Let's see what we have here. Render guide. Okay, that's not too bad. Just a reminder, when you hit D, kind of like you would in a traditional viewport in Houdini, whatever render delegate you have that you're viewing at that time, those are the render settings that'll pop up when you hit D. So right now I'm seeing the Karma viewport render settings. So just to remind you. Okay. It's not so bad. I can go in and let's look through that light one more time. Maybe I want to do something like that. Let's grab the tent again and just my camera placement. Let's just do this. Just for my test render. And let's hop back over to Karma. And also in the meantime, let me just desaturate that a little bit. Bring down the saturation, I should say. Okay, so starting to get, this will be fine for some sort of sequence level lighting. And so the idea is that somebody who's getting started, let's say this is the look they've established for a particular sequence. So you're going to write these out as a layer that your lighter can bring in and start with to get things going. So I think that's looking okay. All right, so while that keeps rendering, I have my lights here. I'm going to drop down a USD ROP. And I'm going to pop over here and say library, demo, layers, and we'll save these out as sequence lights. Actually, just to be safe, call them version 2. Doesn't matter. Click save to disk. And so those should be written out. So, so now we imagine we have our sequence lights set up. We obviously already have our sequence layout set up. So the next thing would be to start putting these together to do some shot lighting. So let's start with a fresh Houdini scene. We can save a new, overwrite, and let's just save this as O2 lighting. Okay. So again, I'm going to start with a sublayer node, and I'm going to bring in my sequence layout like so. My scene graph tree looks pretty good. Let's bring that in like that. Okay. Sequence layout. Now, the next thing I want to do before I bring in any lights, I'm going to start bringing in some of the other layers that I have. So there's a number of ways you can do that. We can fan it out. We can do everything in line. For today, we'll just do it this way. This will be fine. I'm sublayering things on top of one another. So the first thing I'm going to bring in is my tree effects. So let's bring in these trees. And so this is essentially placing the trees that are there with some trees that are sort of moving in the wind. And so if I look at my layers, they might be off a little bit. You'll see that in my layers panel, I can go in here and I have the tree layer and the sequence layer, and I can mute this if I don't want to. I don't want to see those. I just want to see the old trees that I had in there. Let me just turn off the optimization for 1 second. There we go. So we're seeing some trees in there. So things have changed a little bit, but that's okay. These are my final trees that are going to be swaying in the wind. So now the next thing, let's just call these tree effects. Next thing I want to bring in is my tent effects. So let's grab another sublayer node and let's bring in some my tent effects. He didn't present today, but one of our interns in Los Angeles helped me out with these tent effects. He did them in Vellum, and I think he did a great job, Arnold Song. So thank you, Arnold, for your hard work on this. Let me bring in the tent effects layers, and that is right here. So, so now we'll see, we get some wind on those trees. It's probably a little much, but that's okay for now. We're getting a little bit of wind on those, on the tent as well. And just to point out, I want to point out something. So remember, namespace, as I always say, is super important. So you see, if I was looking at this tent by itself, where it goes is exactly where you got to imagine that if you wanted to override what is essentially below it or has a weaker opinion than itself, it should be in that same namespace. So in this case, especially when you're dealing with Vellum, you'll see when we're dealing with RBDs, it's a little bit different, especially if it's instances and you're making new pieces and so on. And I know Steve talked a lot about that today. So in this case, like when I look at this tent thing on its own. It's not even this. It's roughly in the same location, but not really. But that's not really the part that's changing. It's the movement of the point. So when I now layer it on top, it's applying what is different about it. If that makes sense. I know I'm probably jumbling that up a little bit. So, but there it is. You know, we're seeing that vellum simulation on that tent. And I'm going to alt-click and drag another sublayer node, and we will call this basket effects. And we also have some cloth on that basket that we want to see. So right here, again, Arnold, wonderful job here. So we got some things swaying in the wind. Let me save that off. So we have some nice environment going on here. And I want to keep adding now. Essentially, you know, there's a number of ways you can do this. So right now I'm bringing in each effects layer on its own. Some of that is just the nature of this project because people were working sort of in isolation. But if you were part of a bigger pipeline, you might have an effects layer that is referencing or looking at all of these different layers. So maybe I would bring in one layer that was effects only, and that contained the tent, the basket, anything else, the RBDs, things like that. I'm going to bring in the cauldron effect right now. And let's see, cauldron. That's not where it is. It is over here. There we go. Now, of course, this has a frame offset, which is, and it was written out per frame instead of it being stored like the trees. That information is stored within one single USD file. This is a USD file per frame. So I'm sure Simon talked a lot about that. But what I want to do here is I want to account for that. So for right now, I'm not going to worry about the timing of the cauldron and the RBD effect. So I'm just going to say, let's do this as $F, you know, plus 1,000. Let's put that here like that. And that should bring in my cauldron effect right there. There we go. Cool. Let's call this cauldron effects. And now the last layer I want to bring in is my RBD effect. This would be called, we'll call this fracture effects from Steven. Let's go in and grab those. That is here. Same deal. It is a file per frame. You can see it's on the ground right there. If I look at this rigid source, there it is. So let me just quickly, let's look at this effect here for a moment, and let's kind of get an idea of what this cauldron is doing. I think it's right around here. So maybe we want, I don't know, 199, 200 is where we want. Let's see. We'll have Steven's stuff start at frame 199. So let's see, we'll say, what is that? So we'll say, I want to clamp it first of all. So we clamped it. Let's add $F minus 199 in here. And what that does, it's just offsetting the frame. So actually, if we just go through here, we'll see when that thing bursts. We can see that our rigid source, there he is right there, is now falling off because it was motivated by our little burst there. Okay, so the timing of all of those things is okay. I'm going to save this off and I'm going to go back here. And now, so like I mentioned in the viewport here, I can control what is being seen while I'm looking here. So maybe while I'm doing some of this work, I don't necessarily need to see every single layer that's being shown, particularly the cauldron effects. So we can mute both of these for now. So that way that I'm not, it's not slowing me down. Like I just want to do a little bit of lighting right now. So what I'm going to do before I move on here is let's first bring in our camera. So of course we have some shots set up here, and I'm going to sublayer in my camera. And let's grab these here. And let's get camera 0. And let's look through camera 1. I don't love it. And we'll just work with camera 1 to get started. So I have camera 1, and I actually want to change some things about it. Sure, maybe it's not necessarily something Lighter would do. Maybe we go back to the camera or layout department. But let's say I need to make some adjustments here. So one of the things I can do, let me go into my scene graph tree here, and I can see I find my camera. And let me right click on it, and I want to go edit primitive, new node for this primitive, which is camera 1. And it's going to drop down a new camera node. And you see basically everything by default is set to do nothing. So if you've been playing around with LOPs or been watching today, you'll see there's those tabs on the left-hand side that kind of define what to do with the parameters on that USD primitive. Everything is a primitive. So this is saying do nothing, but the action is edit. And so that's what's causing, that is sort of, if you say edit, then it's saying do nothing until you tell me otherwise, basically. So what I want to do now is I want to say, well, I want to change the camera. So I can say, well, set or create. And I can either append the transform. I can, there's a number of things I can do, or I could just replace all of the local transform. So I'm actually going to replace it just because I find it to be easier. And then I'm going to grab the tent, lock to that camera, hit G, and then start going like this. So let me start placing a new camera. Let me go into the view here and say, let's change this to something like 35 lens. Let's go like this, maybe something like that. Okay. Okay, so I'm okay with that layout. I'm starting to like that. So now I want to get started with some lighting. So I'm going to drop down a light mixer. Let's plug that into there. Oh, well, I forgot one key thing. I brought in all my layers. I brought in, the cameras and stuff, but I forgot to bring in my sequence lights. So let me bring those in right here. Let's just grab these from here. Sequence lights. Boom. There we go. There's our sequence lights. So now when I go to my light mixer, I see that I already have some lights set up. What I want to do now is I'm actually going to put these into a collection. We'll call these our sequence lights. Whoops, I didn't mean to capitalize all that. Sequence. Okay, and what's nice about that is I can drag that whole thing over into our light mixer, and it's sort of all grouped together, which means I can also kind of do some sort of global level controls here. In fact, why don't I do that a little bit? Let me bring down commute. I'm going to bring the sun all the way down like this. Just give it a little bit of a fill. And then I want to start adding some more lights to this. So let me go up here and I'm going to click on this add light button. It drops one right before. I'm going to turn this into a spotlight. And in my viewport, I want to start aiming this light. So I'm going to hit Shift F to go into shadow mode. And the reason why is because I want to define where the shadow is going to hit and where I should place this light based on where I want the shadow to go. So if I just click to place the pivot, so we'll click on this table. Let me actually try that again. Click on the table. And then if I can just shift click to place the target, I can put something over here, maybe over here. Let's try something like that over here. Yeah. Okay. Over here. I can also control drag and change the distance. So this thing starts to back up a little bit so that I'm a little further away. Let me place the target again. I'm still in shadow mode. And change the distance some more. It's kind of cool as I'm starting to get some shadows over there. Why don't I click on here, make that the pivot, and then place the target here. Oh, it didn't quite work. Let's try it again. Click there for the pivot. There we go. And then place the target. Get some cool looking shadows here. Okay, let's see what happens. Let me actually go into my light mixer. Maybe I need to crank it up a little bit. So let's grab this here, turn it up. Oh, there we go. Look at it. I'm starting to get some shadows back there. That's kind of nice. I can also just my light there. I can control and shift and really just change the intensity in there. Let's try this again. Let me click to place the pivot. Oh, there we go. And then place the shadow here. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Can adjust the softness, go into my light mixer. And really, so maybe I really want to crank this up. You see I'm hitting a limit there. So if I click on this, this will allow me to change my max value. Let's just do something like 10. And then we can really start to kind of crank that up. Let's look back through our camera. It's not so bad. Click on the light again. And what happens if I click on the target like this? Yeah, getting some kind of cool shadows. All right. I'm going to add another one. Maybe I want to get some lights on that building there. So let's try this. Let's add one more light here. Do sort of the same thing. Make it a spotlight. And this time, let's click on this. And let's say, let's zoom out. Let's see, where do I want to place it? Let's say for this, let's put the pivot here and kind of aim over here. Maybe not. Maybe this one a little bit harder to do with the building and all the trees. So I'm just going to look through this light. Oh, there we go. It's not so bad. Right there. Get some cool shadows coming in through there. Let's go through the camera again. You can start playing around with some of the light linking stuff too here. So let's say, all right, well, let's soften that up. Actually, I don't want to soften it too much. I'll turn that off. And let's put a light linker down. And let's say I want light 2. Let's just add a little bit of a rule here and say, I don't know, building A, building B. Oh, I broke it. I don't want to do that. Let's get rid of that light. I don't know why I did that. Let's try this one more time and say building B. I don't know why that's not working. It's a little strange. I would think that that would mean it would only light that one. All right, well, I'm not going to worry about that then. Let's do something else. Let's say that let's say light 2 here, which is what I'm looking through. That could be why. Let's go to light 2. Actually, I'm going to put my light linker after the fact. For no reason other than my own organizational purposes. And let's say light 2. And I don't want it to light. No, I want it to light that. And that. So let's see what happens if I turn on Karma. Oh, paused. Oh. Zoom render. Camera 1. There we go. So it's still getting lit. That was some sort of weird viewport thing. So now I do look at this light. Let's give this a little bit of color. Yeah, get some orange. Oh, that's a little bit too. Oh. Actually. Oh, I'm messing with the wrong light. That's the problem. Light 2. I was messing with the wrong light. Keep this back where it was. There we go. Okay. All right, so now I can see that I'm getting a little bit of that orange color on that building there. So, yeah, getting cut through by the shadows. Yeah. Okay. All right, now let me bring the sun back up just a little. Okay. All right, so it's not the prettiest. Let's look through light 2 one more time. Let's look through light 1 one more time. Just turn shadows off for a second. I'm actually going to adjust this a little bit more here. Yeah. And then let's look through the sun. All right. So I want to change the sun, actually. I want to change the position of that a little bit. So let's do that. And it's kind of the same way that we did it for the camera. And let's say set or create, replace all local transforms, and of course, let's grab that tint, do something a little bit like that. Look through that camera again, and then let's see what we get out of Karma. All right, I'm starting to get some cool shadows there because I moved some things around. Getting some nice stuff across the buildings. So maybe I can still bring up values of the sun a little bit. But I'm getting some nice effects in there, which is really what I wanted to show you guys how to do. So I'm getting some cool stuff in there, some cool shadows, and so on. So now that we sort of have that shot lit up or set up, we can do something similar here. And let's say we have another camera. So we have camera, this one here. I'm going to look through camera 2. And this one, it's just, we can say, we're just going to keep the lights as they are, so we're not going to do anything to that. And then I'm going to make one more camera. So let's drop down another camera. We'll call this camera, camera 3. Let's bring this one over here. And this, shot back to camera 3. Actually, for that, let me really get in there for this, right? We want to really showcase what we're doing here. Now, I know that Simon has done an awesome camera move for his thing, and if we were gonna, obviously I'm not gonna be able to render it out and so on, but the final product will have a nice camera move that'll track to his effects, and as well as Steve's stuff too. But for now, let's just do something a little bit like this. Okay. Oops, some weird little displacement stuff going on there. And then for this, let me drop down a light mixer over here. And let's bring over our lights. Now I made that collection in that last light mixer. What I should do is make a collection once I bring in the lights, and then it'll carry through to every light mixer. I'm not going to worry about that for right now. So let me just bring this down a little bit here. Let's bring this up like this. Maybe do the same kind of thing for the camera. Like that. Maybe I add one more light. We'll have this light here looking down on the tent. Something like that. And we'll make it, give it some 3, and just give this some color. Camera 3 here. I want to just, whoops. I didn't mean for that to happen. Let's go back in here. Yeah. Okay, so we have our lighting set up, and we want to be able to kick off these renders. So let's set this up so that we can do some multi-shot rendering. We're going to set it up similar to how we did the camera stuff when we used tops to set that up. So I'm going to go in here and drop down switch. Let's bring these in like this. And I'm going to open up my context options editor. Just slide that over. So I already have shots 1, 2, and 3 set up here. If you missed it before, you would add an integer menu, and then add my context or my values there. Click edit, you can see what they are down here. Okay. So I know that that is at shot. So let's put in at shot. We can say now at camera. The problem is that it breaks because it's looking for a particular camera path exactly. So one of the ways that we can deal with that is, and since we're going to be rendering with Karma, we're going to deal with that with Karma. And I can put down a Karma node that I'm going to use for my renderer. And inside of here where it says camera 1, I'm going to say shot +1 is the camera. And so it's going to use this value here that is being exported by that. And so what's cool about that, you'll see that it's changing the switch when I change this. And in my viewport, I can say render settings camera. And so what that's doing is saying, oh, whatever camera this render settings primitive is looking at is the one that I want to use in the viewport. So there it probably just needs a little bit of a kick in the pants there. Again, not sure why. There we go. But you get the idea. So that way, if I'm doing multi-shot and I don't want to have to keep, making sure that my camera is pointing at the right thing, this render settings camera will help with that. So let me drop down a top network and dive inside of that. And then the first thing I'm going to drop down again is a wedge node. And we're going to say shot picker. And we'll say, what do we have? 3 shots, so 0 to 2. We want to do 3 wedges. And we want this to be an integer. And I am going to use a ROP fetch to point at that karma ROP that's in there. I can say karma. All right, now let's go back to my karma node. So before I render any of these things, let me go to, let's go to 1. Let's go to 1 here. And what I want to do here is, let's just do a really, really quick test render. I want to see what this looks like. But I also want to point out some things about karma. Okay, so on the karma node, there's a lot of things in Lobs called like render products and render settings and so on, and they're all primitives that live inside of USD. We do some of that for you in the karma node. So if you go in here, we say here's some standard AOVs that you can generate when you're rendering. And in fact, on this little tab here, you can look through and take a peek at all of them right here. So that's where we would set up our AUVs, and even at the bottom, if you wanted to add any sort of extra render variable, you could do it down there. Now let's finish setting up this up for multi-shot. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to say in my output picture, I am going to put, let's go up here, here. And we'll put it in here. Demo. We can default the folder we'll call render. Let's get out of here because we'll call this shot at wedge index. So it's using that wedge value +1 underscore render underscore version 01 whatever .jpg. However you want to do that. Okay, and then under my context options, I want to control that again. Turn you off. And let's say the option name is shot, of course, and it's a number, and it's be driven by shot picker. Actually, let's do that again. Match shot picker. Okay. And then in here, what we got? We got wedge. We got my shot picker pointing at the karma node that I want to use. And then and what's nice, if I know that this is how I have it set up, this could be render sequence or something. And then all I have to do is say the output node, and it should generate everything for me. So yeah, we can sit here and so this is going to render each one. It's going to create a wedge. It's going to change that switch for you with the context options. It's driving the Karma node is driving those context options, and then it's going to write out each sequence. So you could set up a nice network that does all of this. So as you make big changes across different sequence, especially if you can imagine you are making changes at the sequence level, that could be just a handy way to do that. In fact, gosh, here I just realized. Oh no, that's my camera. That's right. Yeah. So I think that pretty much covers it. So there's one more thing that I'd like to show you. I think I'm going to bypass these tree effects for right now, not bring those in, just for the sake of, for demo purposes here. Okay. And so let me just kill this so it doesn't cancel cook. Okay. So imagine while I'm doing some of this lighting, like for example, I'm looking here and I'm looking through the camera and this tree is bothering me. So maybe I want to move things around a little bit. So what I might be able to do here is I might be able to say, okay, well, let me drop down and extract instances node. And I am going to click on the little arrow here and I'm going to grab the instance that I want. So you'll see it figures out which tree that is. It's tree number 4. And I want to know where to put it. So I'm going to say, well, let's put it in scene /env/ and we'll call it hero tree. I'm sort of heroing out that tree. And then below that, I want to put a transform node in here. And I'm just going to say, let's grab that tree. Where is that tree? Here she is. All right, let's grab that instance that I want to work on. And then I just want to move it out of my way in some way. So let's kind of say, oh no, I like it here. Maybe I don't. Maybe I like it over here. So again, it's a nice feature. I sort of missed it a little bit earlier. I meant to do it sooner. But the point is it's especially when you're dealing with things like instances, but you want to be able to go in and edit things that either live already as an instance or are part of your USD scene, like I've done with the cameras and with the lights and so on. We try to make that as easy for you as possible. So again, I hope you enjoyed what you saw today. And, if you haven't delved into Solaris yet, I encourage you to. It's a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun working on this project, and it's not done yet. We're going to keep working on it and improve upon it and add things to it. So thanks for watching.